A city for 1 million people could already be envisioned in the open ocean with today's technology. But making buildings float is much easier than providing 1 million residents with a normal, stable urban life. Such a megacity would need daily supplies of water, food, electricity, medical care, transportation, and a reliable, functioning sewage system. It must withstand storms, fires, breakdowns, and long periods without assistance from the mainland. That is why a real project starts not with beautiful towers, but with a suitable location at sea. The open ocean looks impressive, but that is precisely where powerful waves become the city's greatest threat. The farther the megacity is offshore, the costlier it is to transport people, fuel, and equipment. The closer it is to the coast, the easier it is to connect it directly to existing infrastructure. Therefore, it makes more sense to locate a floating megacity near major sea routes and well-developed seaports. It needs a deep water area where enormous platforms won't obstruct heavy international shipping traffic around it. Storm tracks and the risk of tropical cyclones also have to be taken into account decades in advance. Real floating community projects therefore begin with more sheltered coastal marine waters as their first sites. The OCEANIX Busan project was proposed for the relatively calm waters of Busan's northern seaport. Its initial design combines 3 separate floating districts covering a total area of about 6 hectares. The first stage is designed for about 12,000 permanent residents and visitors at once. But 1 million people means the overall scale must grow not twofold, but by orders of magnitude. One gigantic slab beneath an entire megacity would be far too expensive and structurally vulnerable. It makes far more sense to build the city from numerous separate floating districts and specialized technical platforms. Each module can be built separately, towed to the chosen location and gradually connected to its neighbors. The separate residential districts are then kept apart from seaports, power plants, farms, and heavy industrial sites. A damaged section can be quickly isolated without shutting down the rest of the megacity. It is precisely modularity that turns a beautiful fantasy into a more understandable, maintainable engineering system. However, each connection between the platforms must withstand waves, strong winds, and constant motion. Subscribe if you're interested in projects where modern engineering pushes up against the limits of real-world physics. Building an entire city for 1 million people at sea would be extremely inconvenient and expensive. It makes more sense to assemble large modules at coastal shipyards with heavy cranes and huge docks. South Korea, China, and Japan already possess vast modern shipbuilding infrastructure on an enormous industrial scale. Each district could be built almost like a very wide marine platform with a substantial displacement. After launch, the platform would be towed to the future city and connected to all the utility networks. Thus, the metropolis would grow gradually, not emerge at once at its final size. At first, several tens of thousands of people could move in, letting engineers find real weak points. Then, hospitals, schools, warehouses, new districts, and additional large-scale power capacity are added. Only after many stages of expansion will the system approach the population of a real metropolis of 1 million people. But the completed city should not resemble a conventional Manhattan built on one giant raft. Tall towers create greater wind loads and noticeably raise the center of gravity of the entire structure. Therefore, floating projects generally favor low-rise, compact urban development distributed evenly throughout the system. OCEANIX Busan, for example, was designed mainly with low-rise buildings, generally no more than 5 stories tall. For a 1 million-person city, individual high-rise buildings are possible, but careful placement is essential. The system's outer ring must, above all, protect residential districts from powerful ocean forces. Huge floating breakwaters can absorb some of the ocean's impact, creating calmer waters within the city's interior. Some technical platforms can be made semi-submersible to significantly reduce the impact of surface waves. But the city is far more complex than an industrial platform. Ordinary families live here permanently.
During a severe storm, the outer districts may be completely closed to residents' usual movements. Ferries stop operating, and people move into more protected interior spaces in neighboring residential modules. Ballast systems control the list and help to maintain large floating platforms in an acceptable position. Sensors continuously monitor water, structural loads, damage, and the condition of connections between all neighboring sections. If the module is damaged, the bulkheads must prevent further spread of water between adjacent compartments. This principle has long been used on large ships whose hulls are divided into protected compartments. Under SOLAS, passenger ships must remain afloat after sustaining design case damage specified in the plans. The city will need even more extensive compartmentalization because 1 million residents cannot be evacuated quickly. The best protection is the ability of a damaged area to remain a contained, localized problem. But even a perfectly protected platform is useless if its residents do not receive fresh water on a regular basis. The ocean surrounds the megacity with an enormous supply of water that people cannot simply drink directly. The foundation of the water supply will be large-scale desalination plants and the continuous reuse of treated water. If we allocate 100 liters per person, we will need 100 million liters of fresh water every day. And that is before the major demands of industry, firefighting systems, and certain urban facilities. So the water supply becomes a vast industry in its own right within the floating megacity, serving 1 million people. Several independent desalination plants are much safer than a single central plant serving the entire city. If one station shuts down, nearby districts will temporarily receive fresh water from reserve supplies. Large storage tanks provide additional time for repairs following an accident or an especially severe storm. Wastewater also cannot simply be discharged back into the ocean without thorough, comprehensive treatment. Some treated water can be reused for the city's own technical and domestic needs in municipal operations. Thus, the metropolis reduces the water it must desalinate, while also cutting pollutant discharges into the ocean. But producing fresh water requires electricity, so the following problem becomes even more serious for the entire city. 1 million residents need energy, not only for lighting and everyday household appliances and electronics. Pumps, desalination, refrigerators, transport, hospitals, and communications must operate around the clock without interruption. Solar panels can be installed on rooftops and on separate, high-output floating energy platforms around the city. Offshore wind turbines can supplement solar power generation in areas well-suited to this purpose. The developers of OCEANIX are considering a combination of solar, wind, and other available marine energy sources. But a megacity cannot be left without power simply because the weather suddenly changes dramatically. Therefore, large-scale batteries, backup generators, and several independent power systems will all be essential. Every critical facility must continue operating reliably, even after a complete shutdown of a nearby power plant. Hospitals, communication systems, pumps, and ballast control for large floating modules are especially important. A loss of electricity here simultaneously causes problems with water, cooling, transport, and overall safety. What matters more for such a city after an accident? Water, electricity, or transportation between districts? The next huge question concerns food, because you simply cannot feed 1 million people on merely token amounts alone. Vertical farms can grow leafy greens, vegetables, and certain crops right alongside local consumers. Hydroponics reduces the need for soil and allows much more precise control over freshwater consumption. Greenhouses protect plants from salt-laden winds and help stabilize growing conditions throughout the year. Fish farms and seaweed cultivation could also become an important part of the city's local food system. But producing all the food needed within the metropolis would be extremely expensive and technically challenging. Grain, oils, meat, and many other goods are cheaper to transport over considerable distances by large cargo ships. Therefore, complete food self-sufficiency is theoretically possible, but not necessarily economically sensible. It is safer to have its own production of fresh food and large strategic reserves of essential staple goods. Then delays affecting several ships do not immediately become a food crisis for 1 million residents. The seaport becomes one of the city's most important organs, almost the real heart of its entire logistics system. It needs container terminals, refrigerated warehouses, fuel berths, and its own substantial repair facilities. Separate cargo districts should be located farther from homes and the city's main public spaces.
This keeps noise, fires, and hazardous cargo from threatening the ordinary daily lives of permanent residents. But food deliveries create another stream that must constantly be removed from the city.
1 million residents produce huge amounts of trash, packaging, wastewater, and various organic waste. Dumping everything overboard is unacceptable, or the city will quickly pollute its own marine environment. That is why it needs full-scale treatment facilities, sorting, and advanced recycling for various urban wastes. Organic waste can be biologically processed, with part of it converted into additional usable energy. Metal, glass, and some plastics can be collected and sent back into industrial production. The remaining waste will still have to be regularly sent to the mainland shore for final processing. A city is autonomous not because it receives absolutely nothing from the outside world. True autonomy means being able to maintain the city's essential functions when important external supplies are delayed. Transport in such a megacity also cannot center on millions of private cars owned by permanent residents.
Floating districts are best connected by rapid public transit and convenient broad pedestrian routes for residents. On the larger modules, a light railway or fully automated urban trains could be used for urban transport. Electric ferries and small service vessels could operate at regular intervals between the distant sectors. Freight traffic travels along separate service routes without crossing the city's main residential areas. Such a city could be designed from the outset around people, rather than around a vast car park. But outside connections will require not only seaports, but also air transport. 1 million residents will create a huge flow of passengers that ships alone would be too slow to handle. A separate runway could be envisaged on a dedicated large floating offshore aviation platform. It is wiser to place it farther from homes due to noise and extremely strict safety requirements.
The airport could be linked to the city center by a high-speed train or a separate, fully protected transit line.
But the airport becomes yet another facility that must be reliably protected from waves at all times. Therefore, building an open ocean city is far more complicated than ordinary protected floating development along the coast. The most challenging requirements emerge when the city begins functioning as a fully fledged, ordinary human community. 1 million residents need maternity wards, surgical units, schools, universities, police, and fully equipped fire services. You cannot count on a doctor or rescuer always being able to fly in quickly from the mainland. Several major hospitals must be located in separate districts, each with its own independent backup power supply. Fire stations are likewise distributed among the modules, so they do not depend on a single route.
SOLA's regulations divide ships into fire zones and require all evacuation routes to be reliably protected. For a floating city, this principle would have to be scaled up to entire independent residential districts.
During a major fire, the neighboring district must remain safe despite complete loss of connection. Firefighting water is available all around, but the equipment still requires power and pumps. The most dangerous mistake is attempting to plan the evacuation of all 1 million city residents at once. Even a huge rescue fleet could not quickly evacuate the entire population during a storm. Therefore, the emergency strategy should be built around relocating residents between safe sectors of the city. Residents leave the damaged district, while neighboring districts take in people, supplies, and medical services.
In practice, the finest rescue vessel for such a megacity is always located within the floating city itself.
But technical autonomy does not answer the question of who actually owns this floating megacity. If it is located within a state's economic zone, that state's jurisdiction applies there exclusively. The United Nations Convention regulates artificial islands and related structures within such maritime economic zones. An artificial platform does not automatically acquire island status or its own full territorial sea by itself. So, building a city far from shore does not mean creating an independent country.
It would require laws, taxation, police, immigration rules, and international agreements with neighboring countries. The legal system could prove to be almost as complex as the entire technical infrastructure of the floating city. Now, the main question is why 1 million people would voluntarily move there and make it their home. A beautiful ocean view alone is not enough, as housing and upkeep there will be extremely expensive. The city would need to create enough jobs that genuinely make effective use of its unusual location at sea. Potential industries could include logistics, ship repair, energy, research, tourism, and high-tech maritime manufacturing. Data centers are also possible if energy, communications, and efficient cooling issues are resolved. A major international seaport could become the economic core of the entire new floating urban system. But if the jobs disappear, people will not stay merely for the unusual architecture surrounding them. Ultimately, economics will determine whether the floating megacity becomes a real city or an expensive engineering experiment. Without a specific plan, the project's cost cannot honestly be expressed as one precise final figure.
But it almost inevitably means hundreds of billions of dollars and colossal surrounding infrastructure. Platforms would account for only part of the cost, alongside energy, seaports, transport, and city protection. Hospitals, schools, water supply systems, wastewater treatment facilities, and various emergency backup systems will also be needed. The farther the city is from shore, the higher the cost of every repair and delivery. Therefore, the first truly megacity will most likely emerge near a wealthy and developed coastal economy. It could begin as an extension of the seaport, then gradually extend farther out to sea. This way, the existing city provides the first jobs, roads, power infrastructure, skilled professionals, and large markets. Tell us, could you actually live here if the shore always stayed far beyond the horizon? Physically, a floating megacity for 1 million people does not violate any obvious laws of nature today. Modules can be added gradually, expanding the total area along with the ongoing growth of the population and economy. Even several million residents would not, in theory, impose any simple limit on the structure's total buoyancy. The real limit lies in the number of systems that must operate reliably and simultaneously every day. Water is produced, energy is stored, food is delivered, waste is processed, and the platforms are repaired continuously at all times. Each new section adds not only housing, but also additional demands on the entire infrastructure.
At some point, it becomes cheaper to build ordinary neighborhoods again on nearby mainland. So, conquering the ocean is technically easier than making permanent life on it economically viable. The floating megacity will become real not when platforms can support 1 million permanent residents. It will emerge when 1 million people have a strong reason to choose the ocean as home.